Superpowers, Fleischer Superman. When I was growing up, I had two main Superman cartoon introductions. One was an episode recorded on a VHS that even to this day, I don't know exactly what it was, but would love to own it. It was an 80s Superman cartoon. I know that. I know that it was a Superman cartoon. And I know the episode that I had on VHS, which was literally recorded off of TV, had him fighting with Wonder Woman against these, like, enemy monster things that wore these, like, chest belts like He-Man. If you pulled the belts off, the incantation was broken and the creatures would dissolve and become nothingness. And I remember that was my, like, first real introduction to Wonder Woman as well. And I don't know why, but she stuck with me after that episode. I remember liking her a lot, to the point where I already loved Superman, but I rewatched that Superman episode over and over and over because Wonder Woman was in it. So that was my big introduction to the character of Wonder Woman, and who is that? The other one was this guy right here. Kind of. We'll talk about it. The Fleischer series cartoons were and are still some of the greatest mini Superman stories, like mini stories, ever told, ever showcased in Superman ever, and are an interesting view into how superheroes evolve over time. That was the first time I'd ever seen the look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. I'm not looking up for either one of those things. It's Superman, huh? Da-da-da, da-da-da. Then it would show him, and it would, like, show the Superman. He'd be standing there, and it would kind of bleed into the Clark Kent, kind of being like, this is, you know, the alter ego, and yada yada. And it would always start, you know, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and it would show the train. Like, I remember that intro used to, like, be so exciting. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, which isn't really very impressive if you think about it, because he can fly. But, big old giant butt, he could not fly. He could not fly. In the first couple cartoons, he did not fly. He jumped. I remember there was like a dinosaur, and he would, like, jump, like building to building, zoom, zoom, like jump across buildings, and then, like, jump really high, and then land, then, like, fight a dinosaur, and, like, jump up in the air and, like, punch it, or, like, move it around or whatever. He was jumping all over the place. Then, almost out of nowhere, he just flew. And if I'm remembering right, maybe I'm misremembering a little bit, but I seem to remember there being one of these cartoons where he would, like, the first cartoon that he flies in, he, like, jumps twice, then takes flight. It's like jump, 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 and then, like, kind of like he just never goes back down again. Like, he straightens up and starts to fly. And, like, at that point, Superman could fly. And I remember hearing something, and as I said, I'm no kind of expert. I never claimed to be an expert. This is just the way that fandom has affected me throughout the years, and I like to share it with you. I remember hearing that the reason he started flying in the first place is because it was a bit of a pain to animate him jumping everywhere. So the question was brought up, hey, would it be completely problematic if he could fly? And basically the answer to that was, sure, I guess. So they started making him fly in the cartoon, which of course then meant he could fly in the comics. This was some of the greatest animation I had ever seen in my life. Little things like fighting against the laser beam that was holding him back, and when he's putting his hand up and everything, and he starts like punching through the beam. Little things like when he flies up onto the top of the airplane, like peels the top of it back. When he's fighting against the robot machines, when the lava falls and he puts his cape out like this so that the lava hits his back and cascades off of him and does not kill Lois Lane. Though, if we were being hypercritical in that time, even if his costume is nay indestructible like he is, that's still lava, only this far away from Lois's head, that then cascades all around her. I think the heat kills her. I don't claim to know that much about lava, but I think there's a real possibility that her being that ridiculously close, even covered by him, is probably still exceptionally dangerous for her. Maybe she doesn't die, but I imagine she gets some serious burns or something from that. Regardless, it was Superman, and we weren't complaining because it was good Superman. This was one of those turn your brain off and see a fantastic tale. And every one of those tales was fantastic. This Superman defined it for me when I was growing up. It was what I expected Superman to be. It's true that later on, I then pivoted and watched the Christopher Reeve movies and was blown away. And that became my Superman. And I didn't care about the ones that were bad either, just so you're aware. I liked the first, the second, the third, and the fourth. As an older man, it's not quite the same, but I remember I loved all four of those movies when I was growing up. They were Superman, as far as I was concerned. And all the time, Superman goes on different adventures. I didn't need him to always deal with the same bad guy, Lex Luthor. There was plenty of him going around. And of course, we move into the Justice League, and then that became like the big Superman. But before that, I watched Superman the Animated Series, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Superman grew consistently throughout the course of my life, as well as me reading the comic books. But when I think back on Superman, the quintessential Superman, the one that appears in my head, if I was to close my eyes and I was to go back and say, what is the animated Superman? What is the first costume I want? This. It's this. It's not even a question. I want the black with the S with the rim in yellow. We're going to open this. I think there's only one thing that I'm not necessarily a fan of. And before we even start, yes, this is just a blatant repaint. But it's also superpowers, so like, what did we expect? And there he is. Faster than a speeding bullet and more powerful than a locomotive, and a blatant, hardcore repaint of the other Superman that we already had. Superman! Am I mad about it? No. In fact, I think that there are some things that are definitely improved over time, and I know this is the first Superman that was released in this wave, so that's what I'm talking about. They are still using this buck, as far as I could tell, for this Superman. But I don't hate it. I'm willing to forgive a lot on a $10 figure of Superman. Minor complaints. I don't know if it's something in the cape, but my arm, for some reason, has this scuffing. I don't know why, but I don't know if that's a bleed from the cape. I have no idea. I really don't. This Superman had the S, but I will say this Superman, I don't remember, if I'm being completely honest, if he ever had that S on the back of his cape in the first place. If he did, it's a distant memory that I am not remembering, so this is not bothering me as much as maybe it would bother some other people. The colors are a bit darker, especially in the red, but I feel like that's true to the time. I like this S here, of course. I like this outline. I don't mind the fact that this is the head sculpt, though one could complain that it's not right. One could complain that that is not the Fleischer Superman face. You could do such, and you would not be wrong for feeling so. One could also argue that maybe coloring-wise, it would do a lot if there was like, these were black with like some red highlights, because sometimes you saw that a lot in the animation. But I've always been one that doesn't like shadowing added to my figures, because in reality, these are 3D objects, and the light will bounce off of them naturally and add shadows such as it's doing for his abs right now anyway. So that's my only argument against that. These capes have certainly gotten better since this cape, this weird plasticky weird cape that I really did not like at all, aside from the fact that it had the S on the back. These are my two icon Superman costumes. Absolutely. In fact, I wish... I've missed a Superman twice now. Not too long ago, released at Walmart was a new Superman, an Action Comics Superman with a cloth cape, as far as I could tell, reusing the body that I wanted for my Superman. If I ever buy a McFarlane Superman, and as of yet I have not because I don't like a single one he has released, I always find myself being unhappy with the face sculpt, or the body's too big, or the boots are wrong, or the belt isn't correct, or some variant of those problems all the time. I can't get away from it. There's always at least one detail somewhere that makes me go, that's not the Superman I want for my shelf. He can keep his 20 bucks. He's not getting mine. But in both cases, I think there's an Action Comics 1000 Superman that was released. I would have bought him. I missed him. I was unaware it was a thing because I was not collecting the line at that time, and I don't want to spend $100 to get him. Then he did an Action Comics Superman very recently with a cloth cape, which was basically a reuse of the Action Comics 1000 Superman with the cloth cape. And I said, there's my second chance. I checked every single one of my Walmarts. No luck. I went online. No luck. I can't get it. Honest shame. I cannot land the Superman that I want in his line. He doesn't produce them at a high enough quality. Or quantity, I'm sorry. And you would think that if they were being bought up like crazy and then sold on the aftermarket, I would still just have a very easy chance, but I'm not even seeing that necessarily. At least not in the circles where I'm willing to buy. So, I just never get that Superman. I don't have a DC Multiverse Superman on the shelf. And I don't see myself getting one. And I only buy, I try to keep this a true thing, I only buy the figures that mean something to me. If there's not a story to tell, I try to stay away from them. These need to mean something to me. My collection is a library to my personality, my personal experiences, and my wants. My desires, my opinions. If they're not, then they're not important. And chances are, at one point or another, they leave the shelf. And because of that, I'm fairly particular about my Superman. I have almost bought the Superman that wears this costume a couple of times in the DC Multiverse line. The big one, the big wide one that now comes with the eagle. But I don't like when my Supermans or any of my figures have pre-shadows drawn onto them. I don't like that. I also don't like Superman to be this big wide body. It bothers me. I don't know why, but I really don't like it. And I really hate the chin where it's like a super ridiculous out chin with like a hardcore dimple. I don't like that either. And I don't need an extreme, I like him to have the hair flip here. But like there's something about him having like the almost pompadour hair flip that I cannot stand. So every time I turn around, there's a new reason not to buy a Superman from this line, and I have missed the ones that I want over and over and over again. But I was able to at least get him, and he was like the last one in the store. So take your victories where you get them. That's the thing about collecting. You collect, but depending on the amount of money you have, when you have it, where you are, and where you're shopping, there are certain things that you simply will not be getting. Which means that all of our collections, inevitably, turn out being very different. Especially if we buy like I do, where you cherry pick the lines of every line because you buy what speaks to you. I am not necessarily a completionist. On almost any line, I don't care about that. I care about how's it talk to me. How's it speak to me. And this does speak to me. So I put it on the shelf. I don't know if there are many superpower figures in my future, like many other ones. This, I can't say, because I just can't, that this is the last one. I really can't make a determination like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's awful close to the last one I get. Because I'm just not a superpowers collector. Even though I will admit, some of them are very cool. Talk to you later.
I have spoken. Take what you will from it.